The vast emptiness of space stretched before Captain Sarah Chen as she stared through the command deck's viewport. 20 years of military service hadn't prepared her for this moment. The massive alien vessel loomed ahead, its crystalline surface refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of her console, but not from fear, from anticipation. "They're hailing us again, Captain," Lieutenant River reported, his voice steady despite the tension filling the bridge. "Same message as before. Submit or be eradicated." A bitter smile crossed Sarah's face. How typical of the Zoraxians, believing that technological superiority equated to actual superiority. They'd conquered 12 species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, each one more advanced than humanity in almost every way. The crew of the UES Defiant held their breath, waiting for their captain's response. These aliens had energy shields that could shrug off nuclear strikes, weapons that could reduce planets to ash, and artificial intelligence that made Earth's quantum computers look like pocket calculators. By all logical measures, humanity should have surrendered the moment the Zoraxian fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system. But logic wasn't humanity's strong suit. Neither was technological advancement, if she was being honest. What humans excelled at was something far more primitive and far more powerful: the ability to be absolutely, illogically, impossibly stubborn in the face of overwhelming odds. The Zoraxians had called it cowardice when humanity refused to meet them in traditional ship-to-ship combat. They didn't understand that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is run away, regroup, and think outside the box. "Send them our response, Lieutenant," Sarah ordered, her voice carrying the weight of Earth's last desperate gambit. The plan was insane. Irrational species would never attempt it. But that's exactly why it might work. The alien ship's crystal hull continued to shimmer, its crew probably laughing at the primitive humans and their outdated spacecraft. As Sarah gave the signal, she remembered the words of her old flight instructor: "The most dangerous animal isn't the biggest or the strongest. It's the one backed into a corner with nothing left to lose." Earth was certainly in that corner now, with the Zoraxian fleet positioning itself for the final strike that would end humanity's resistance once and for all. The Defiant's crew watched in tense silence as their message reached the alien vessel. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the crystalline surface of the Zoraxian ship began to pulse with an angry red light. They'd taken the bait. Sarah allowed herself a small smile as she thought about what the aliens must be thinking right now, realizing that the supposedly cowardly humans had done something no other species had ever dared. "They're powering up their main weapons array," River reported, his hands flying over his console. "But they haven't detected." "They won't," Sarah interrupted, her eyes fixed on the magnificent alien ship that was about to learn a very important lesson about human nature. "Not until it's too late." The bridge crew strapped themselves in, preparing for what would either be humanity's finest hour or their last stand. Either way, they were about to show the galaxy that sometimes the biggest act of courage is knowing when to run, and knowing exactly where to lead your enemy while you're doing it. As the Zoraxian ship moved into position, Sarah whispered the ancient human phrase that had become humanity's unofficial motto since first contact: "Fortune favors the bold." The next few minutes would determine whether humanity's desperate gamble would pay off, or if their species would join the others in the Zoraxian Empire's list of conquests. But one thing was certain: the aliens were about to learn why humans were called the most unpredictable species in the galaxy. Sarah's mind flashed back to the emergency council meeting 6 months ago, when Earth's greatest minds gathered to face an uncomfortable truth. We couldn't win this war through conventional means. The Zoraxians had expected humanity to either submit immediately or fight back with everything we had. Instead, we'd spent 3 years appearing to run scared, executing seemingly chaotic retreats and abandoning outposts at the first sign of their ships. "Status of operation, Pete Piper?" Sarah asked, keeping her voice level despite the sweat beading on her forehead. The plan had taken years of preparation, countless sacrifices, and more than a little misdirection. The Zoraxians thought they were hunting humanity to extinction, never realizing they were being guided along a very specific path. "All stations report ready," River responded, his fingers dancing across the holographic display. Mining Colony 7 confirms optimal positioning. They're maintaining radio silence as ordered. Sarah nodded, thinking of the brave souls who'd volunteered to stay behind on what appeared to be an abandoned mining facility. The Zoraxians would detect their life signs soon enough, exactly as planned. The massive alien vessel adjusted its course slightly, its crystalline surface still pulsing with that ominous red glow. They were following the trail of breadcrumbs humanity had left, believing they were forcing the humans into a final desperate stand. The truth was far more interesting. For 3 years, humanity had been carefully studying their enemies, learning their patterns, their protocols, their weaknesses. The Zoraxians were methodical to a fault, always following the same tactical doctrine that had served them so well against more advanced civilizations. Receiving emergency broadcast from Mining Colony 7, Rivera announced, right on schedule. The distress call was genuine enough. The mining facility was indeed in trouble. What the Zoraxians didn't know was that every seemingly random retreat, every abandoned outpost, every desperate distress call had been carefully orchestrated to bring them to this exact spot. The bridge crew watched as the alien ship moved closer to the mining facility, no doubt preparing to add another victory to their unbroken string of conquests. Sarah thought about the history of warfare on Earth, how humanity's greatest victories often came not from superior technology or numbers, but from understanding psychology, both our own and our enemies. Signal from the facility, Rivera reported. They're detecting the expected energy signature. The Zoraxians are preparing to deploy their standard boarding protocol. Of course they were. The Zoraxians never varied their tactics because they'd never needed to. Their technological superiority had always been enough. They couldn't comprehend that humanity's apparent cowardice, our tendency to run, hide, and avoid direct confrontation, wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a strategy. The mining facility's external lights began to flicker, another carefully choreographed signal. The Zoraxian ship moved into its final attack position, its weapon systems charging for what they assumed would be a quick and decisive victory. They had no way of knowing that every human retreat, every abandoned position, every seemingly random movement over the past 3 years had been leading them into position for something unprecedented. Sarah checked the countdown timer on her display. 5 minutes until the trap would be sprung. 5 minutes until humanity would show the galaxy why you should never corner a species that had spent its entire history learning to survive against stronger, faster, more powerful opponents. The Zoraxians were about to learn what Earth's predators had discovered eons ago, that sometimes the prey is more dangerous than the hunter. All stations, final positions, Sarah ordered, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's future. The crew responded with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role in what would either be remembered as humanity's greatest victory or our last defiant stand. The mining facility's systems began their shutdown sequence, a deliberate display of vulnerability that made Sarah's heart race. Every light dimmed, every defense system powered down, presenting the perfect target for the Zoraxians' standardized conquest protocols. Their massive ship edged closer, its crystalline hull now casting shadows over the seemingly helpless human installation. Enemy vessel has launched boarding shuttles, Rivera announced, his voice barely above a whisper. The Zoraxians were following their playbook to the letter, just as they had on every world they'd conquered. First, they'd secure the facility. Then they'd extract its resources and any useful technology. Finally, they'd use it as a forward base for their next phase of conquest. It was a strategy that had worked perfectly 12 times before, but Earth wasn't like those other worlds. Sarah watched the tactical display as dozens of alien shuttles streamed toward the mining facility. The Zoraxians had violated their own safety protocols in their eagerness to claim another victory, moving their capital ship far closer than usual. Their arrogance had made them predictable. Their contempt for humanity had made them careless. Most importantly, their absolute certainty in their technological superiority had made them blind. 3 minutes until they reached the facility's outer doors, Rivera reported. Sarah nodded, remembering the countless simulations they'd run, the years of preparation that had gone into this moment. The mining facility wasn't truly abandoned. It housed a volunteer crew of Earth's bravest men and women who trained relentlessly for this single operation. They were humanity's best hope, and they only had one chance to get this right. The massive Zoraxian vessel hung in space like a predator about to strike, its weapon systems still humming with barely contained energy. They'd positioned themselves perfectly to support their boarding teams and prevent any possibility of escape. In doing so, they'd unknowingly completed the final piece of humanity's trap. 2 minutes, Rivera counted down. Sarah's hands clenched into fists as she watched the alien shuttles dock with the facility. The Zoraxians would be advancing through the airlock now, their advanced sensors scanning for threats, their AI systems analyzing every detail. But they weren't looking for the right things. They were searching for energy signatures, for advanced weapons, for the kind of resistance they'd faced from other species. They weren't prepared for what humanity had planned. 1 minute, Rivera's voice cracked slightly. The bridge crew held their breath. Years of apparent cowardice, of running and hiding, had all been leading to this moment. The Zoraxians had never bothered to study Earth's history, to understand why humans had survived countless extinction-level events. They didn't realize that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was our ability to think differently, to find solutions where none seemed possible. 30 seconds, Rivera whispered. Sarah's eyes remained fixed on the tactical display, watching as more and more Zoraxian troops poured into the facility. Their capital ship maintained its position, its crystal hull gleaming with apparent invincibility. They still hadn't realized that the mining facility's particular location wasn't random, that its specific position in space had been chosen years ago for this exact purpose. 10 seconds, Rivera's voice was barely audible now. Sarah thought about all the brave souls inside that facility, waiting for their moment. The Zoraxians were about to learn why testing humanity's resolve had been their greatest mistake. Because when faced with extinction, humans didn't just fight back. We rewrote the rules of the game entirely. 5 seconds, Rivera announced, and Sarah took a deep breath. Everything they'd planned, everything they'd sacrificed, had brought them to this moment. The Zoraxians were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one that stands and fights. It's the one that leads you exactly where they want you to go. Detonation in 3, 2, 1. Rivera's countdown ended in deafening silence. For a moment, nothing happened. The Zoraxian ship hung motionless, its crystalline surface still reflecting the distant starlight. Then, deep within the mining facility, something changed. Not with a bang, but with a barely perceptible ripple in space-time that made Sarah's stomach lurch. Gravitational anomaly detected, Rivera reported, his voice tight with tension. The quantum singularity is forming exactly as calculated. The mining facility wasn't just a facility. It was humanity's greatest achievement in theoretical physics disguised as an abandoned outpost. For 3 years, while the Zoraxians thought they were hunting humans across space, we had been perfecting something unprecedented. Suddenly, alarms blared across the Zoraxian vessel. Their advanced sensors must have finally detected what was happening, but it was already too late. The mining facility had just activated a controlled quantum singularity, creating a localized gravitational field that made Earth's strongest black holes look like gentle breezes. Sir, Rivera's voice cracked with urgency. We're detecting massive energy spikes from the Zoraxian ship. They're activating something we've never seen before. Sarah's blood ran cold. This wasn't part of the plan. The Zoraxians were supposed to be trapped by the gravitational field, their crystalline hulls slowly buckling under forces they couldn't resist. Instead, their massive ship began to pulse with a deep purple light that seemed to bend reality itself. Impossible energy readings, Rivera reported, his hands flying over his console. They're generating some kind of reality warping field. The gravitational trap is being disrupted. For the first time since the operation began, Sarah felt real fear. The Zoraxians had hidden capabilities, technologies they'd never revealed in any previous conquest. Message coming in, Rivera announced, his face pale. They're laughing, Captain. The alien transmission filled the bridge, a sound that seemed to scrape against the inside of Sarah's skull. The Zoraxians weren't just fighting back. They were mocking humanity's best effort to defeat them. The mining facility's gravity weapon continued to pulse, straining against whatever impossible technology the Zoraxians had activated. Sarah watched in horror as space itself seemed to twist and warp between the two forces. This wasn't just a battle anymore. It was a tug-of-war between physics and something that shouldn't exist. "Captain," Rivera's voice was barely a whisper now. "The volunteers in the facility. They're sending a message." Sarah's heart sank as she opened the communication channel. The brave men and women inside that station had known this might be a one-way mission, but none of them had expected this turn of events. The message was simple, but it changed everything. "We found their weakness, Captain. The crystal. It's not technology. It's alive." Sarah's mind raced as she processed this revelation. The Zoraxians hadn't built their ships. They'd grown them. And living things, no matter how advanced, had basic instincts, including fear. "New energy signature detected," Rivera announced, his eyes wide. "It's coming from inside the Zoraxian ship." The massive vessel's purple glow flickered for a moment, its crystalline surface rippling like water. Something was happening, something neither humanity nor the Zoraxians had anticipated. The trap hadn't failed. It had worked in a way no one could have predicted. Sarah leaned forward in her chair, watching as the impossible battle unfolded before her. The Zoraxians had revealed their true nature, but in doing so, they might have exposed their greatest vulnerability. Now humanity just had to survive long enough to exploit it. "All stations," she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. "Prepare for Emergency Protocol Omega. We're not done yet." Protocol Omega wasn't a military strategy or a scientific breakthrough. It was something far more basic, far more human. As the Zoraxian ship writhed in space, caught between the quantum singularity's pull and its own reality-warping defense, Sarah gave the order that would change the course of the war. "Broadcast the signal. Full spectrum. Maximum power." The sound that filled space wasn't a weapon or a technological marvel. It was music. The combined frequencies of every musical instrument humanity had ever created, carefully calibrated to resonate at the exact frequency of crystalline structures. The Zoraxians had never encountered anything like it because no other species they conquered had developed music quite like humans had. Their living ship screamed, not through communications channels, but through the vibrations of its very structure. The purple energy field flickered and died as the crystalline hull began to pulse in rhythm with humanity's symphony. "It's working," Rivera shouted, his voice filled with disbelief. "The crystal structure is resonating. It's singing back to us." Sarah watched in awe as the massive alien vessel's surface began to shift and change, its color transforming from threatening purple to a soft, almost peaceful blue. The Zoraxian troops inside the mining facility suddenly broke formation, their coordinated attack dissolving into chaos as their connection to their living ship was disrupted by the music. "Message from the facility," Rivera reported, his voice shaking with excitement. "The Zoraxian troops, they're not fighting anymore. They're dancing." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The one thing the aliens had never understood about humanity was our ability to find joy even in our darkest moments. Music wasn't just art to humans. It was a fundamental part of who we were. The crystalline ship's surface continued to transform, its structure no longer responding to its Zoraxian controllers, but instead moving in harmony with Earth's greatest gift to the galaxy. The aliens had never considered that their living ships might have desires of their own, might respond to something as simple and profound as music. "Captain," Rivera's voice was filled with wonder, "we're receiving a new transmission. It's coming from the ship itself." Sarah nodded, understanding at last. The Zoraxians hadn't built an empire. They'd enslaved one. Their ships weren't tools. They were prisoners, forced to serve as weapons of war. Until now. The crystal vessel's final transformation was breathtaking. Its surface shifted from geometric patterns into flowing, organic shapes that moved in perfect synchronization with humanity's musical signal. The Zoraxian troops found themselves trapped inside a ship that no longer recognized them as masters, but as unwanted parasites. "This is why we were worthy," Sarah whispered, understanding flooding through her. "This is why Earth was chosen. The other species had fought with technology, with weapons, with logic. Humanity had fought with art, with music, with the fundamental expressions of what it meant to be alive. We hadn't just defeated the Zoraxians, we had freed their slaves." As the living ship began to pulse with its own music, joining Earth's symphony in a harmony that defied description, Sarah realized that humanity's greatest strength had never been our ability to fight. It had been our ability to create, to feel, to share the simple joy of existence with others. The Zoraxians had called us cowards because we refused to fight on their terms. Instead, we had changed the terms of engagement entirely. "Orders, Captain?" Rivera asked, his console showing dozens of other Zoraxian ships across the galaxy beginning to resonate with the same frequency. Sarah stood, watching as humanity's music spread across space, carrying with it not just victory, but liberation. "Send them everything," she commanded. "Every song, every melody, every piece of music humanity has ever created. Let's show the galaxy what it means to be truly free." The war that had threatened to end humanity had instead ended with a concert that spanned the stars. The cowardly humans, who had run and hidden for so long, had done what no other species could. We had turned an enemy into an ally not through force, but through the simple, powerful act of sharing who we truly were. 6 months after what historians would later call the Symphony of Liberation, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the newly established Harmony Station, watching as crystalline ships danced through space in patterns that defied both physics and imagination. The Zoraxian Empire had collapsed not with violence, but with music. Their former ships, now free-willed beings, had become humanity's most passionate allies in reshaping the galaxy. "The latest reports are in," Captain Rivera said, joining her at the viewport. He kept his position as her second-in-command, though their mission had changed dramatically. 3 more crystal colonies have emerged from deep space, drawn by the music. They're requesting Earth's cultural database. Sarah nodded, still amazed by how quickly things had changed. The living ships, once freed, had revealed that there were thousands more of their kind hidden throughout the galaxy, waiting for someone to wake them up. The former Zoraxian leaders, stripped of their living weapons, had been forced to face a galaxy that no longer feared them. Most had surrendered peacefully, their own troops turning against them when they realized the truth about the empire they'd served. The few who had tried to fight found themselves without ships, without power, and without purpose. "Did you read the latest analysis from the Cultural Exchange Program?" Rivera asked, his face breaking into a grin. "Apparently, the crystal beings have developed their own music. They're calling it crystalline jazz. It's becoming quite popular on Earth." Sarah laughed, remembering how much had changed. Humanity, once considered the weakest species in the galaxy, was now credited with sparking a cultural renaissance that spanned countless worlds. The mining facility, still maintaining its orbit at the edge of human space, had been transformed into a memorial and music conservatory. Students from across the galaxy came there to learn not just about music, but about courage, creativity, and the power of thinking differently. The volunteer crew who had risked everything had become legendary teachers, sharing the story of how humanity's greatest weakness, our tendency to avoid direct confrontation, had proven to be our greatest strength. "Message from Earth Command," Rivera said, checking his tablet. "They're asking if you'll lead the first joint human crystal exploration mission to the galactic core. Apparently, there are signals suggesting more crystal colonies out there, still waiting to be awakened." Sarah smiled, thinking about how far they'd come. The species that everyone had dismissed as cowards was now leading the charge into unknown space, armed not with weapons, but with songs. The massive crystal ships outside the viewport shifted their dance, their surfaces catching starlight in ways that created new forms of visual music. They weren't just allies or friends anymore. They were collaborators in an ongoing artistic performance that spanned the cosmos. Humanity had given them freedom through music, and in return, they had shown us wonders we never could have imagined. "Tell Command I accept," Sarah said, her eyes fixed on the dance of light and crystal before her. "But first, I want to make a stop at Earth. There's an old video recording I want to bring along." River raised an eyebrow questioningly. "My grandmother's piano recital from when I was a child," she explained. "The first piece of music that made me understand that sometimes the most powerful things in the universe aren't the ones that make the loudest noise." As she watched the crystal ships weave their patterns through space, Sarah thought about how the galaxy had changed. The species that everyone had called cowards had taught the universe a lesson about true courage. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't standing your ground or fighting back. It's daring to share your heart with others, even in the face of impossible odds. The symphony of the stars played on, a testament to humanity's greatest discovery, that in a universe full of weapons, art could be the most powerful force of all.